Thank you all for joining us for tonight's alumni career panel for the history department. My name is Lane Harris. I am the current chair of the history department. It's a great honor to serve in this terrific place, Furman University. And tonight I have been fortunate to be joined by a number of our distinguished alums who are representing, of course, themselves, but also a variety of different career paths. And we'll have them introduce themselves, their hometowns, graduation year, how they chose their history major, and then their current career trajectory. They may have several. And then we'll ask them a few questions and hear different kinds of responses. And if the audience has any questions as we go through the event, please put them in the Q&A. And then we'll try to leave 10 or 15 minutes at the end of the session to ask those questions to the panelists. So without further ado, could I ask Juliana to begin?
Sure. Good evening. I'm Juliana Battenfield. I'm from Winter Park, Florida, but I claim Greenville as my hometown. And I graduated in 2011 as a history major, almost was certified as a secondary social studies teacher, but decided not to do student teaching at the last minute. And I'm currently an assistant attorney general with the South Carolina Office of the Attorney General. I handle death penalty, murder, and really bad rape cases on appeal, meaning after people have been to trial and been convicted. My job is to review procedure and make sure that things have been done correctly. And if they have, to keep the person in jail. And if they have not, to do everything I can to get the person relief.
Oh, so obviously you went to law school. Where did you?
I did. Regent School of Law, Virginia Beach.
Virginia Beach, great. Let's maybe move over to Philip. Thank you, Juliana. Philip, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. It's nice to be here and appreciate being invited. So my name is Philip Belcher. My hometown is Barnwell, South Carolina, which is an hour south of Columbia. It's smaller now than it was when I graduated from high school. And so I graduated from Furman in 1982. I was a history major, but at that time, and this will date me as many things will in this panel, Furman didn't have minors. So at that, I took enough courses almost to also double major in religion. My current job is as the vice president of programs, which basically means overseeing grant making at the Community Foundation of Western North Carolina. I went to divinity school in Wake Forest, the town of Wake Forest. I went to law school at Duke. I practiced law for a good while, and then I got into philanthropy. And in the middle of philanthropy, I got an MFA in creative writing and poetry. So we can talk about any of that or whenever the time comes. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Taylor, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, good evening, everybody. My name is Taylor, and I went to Furman and graduated in 2008. I was a double major, political science and history. I'm dialing in from Geneva, Switzerland. I've been here for about 3 years. Worked for WHO as part of the UN, and before that, I worked for Doctors Without Borders. So I actually took a different pathway, I think, than others. So after graduating Furman, I went into the Peace Corps, and then went back overseas working primarily in emergency response for health and food insecurity, focused on Africa. So I worked for Catholic Relief Services for a few years, Doctors Without Borders, and then went to the UN. So thanks for inviting me.
Thank you so much for joining us from Switzerland. For everybody in the audience, Taylor is joining us at 1 a.m. So she's giving back to Furman in a big way. How about you, Michael?
Hey everyone, my name is Michael Keene. My hometown is originally Chicago, but I currently live in Raleigh, North Carolina right now. I graduated from Furman in 2012, and like Juliana, I was actually going to be a high school history teacher when I started at Furman, but then quickly veered the other way right around student teaching time as well. And ended up going to Clemson to get my master's in counselor education, and now work in student affairs administration in higher ed. So I now work with college students doing that on a regular basis. So like student life department at Furman, that's pretty much what I do on a regular basis. Here at NC State is where I work right now.
Great. So you all represent a variety of different career pathways. So I'd like to dig in and ask you some questions about those pathways, both at Furman and then since you've graduated. So the typical kind of question we want to start with is what got you started at Furman? What would be some advice you would give to first and second year students or students beginning to think about potential majors? How did you coalesce around history in your time here? Juliana, do you want to start?
Sure. I went to high school in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and I was going to go to William and Mary. I found Furman at the last minute, and Furman fit who I am way more. And I thought, this is my dream school, and applied and thankfully got in, and it was awesome. I really, really enjoyed the environment at Furman. Of course, it was very rigorous. I think at the time I was there, it was second most rigorous school in the nation, so it was very difficult. I was asked yesterday why I didn't go straight to law school, which I know we'll probably get there, but I was burnt out probably after 4 years at Furman, just working really hard. But I chose history because I knew I came to Furman knowing I wanted to go to law school, but I don't think I was ready to go to law school. So I wanted something that was a happy medium, which is why I went to secondary social studies. I loved history. I still do love history and English equally. And don't tell them I told you this, but I chose history because honestly, the history department at the time I was there was better than the English department. So, so that's probably scandalous to say, but that is true. And advice I would give to first and second years is take it slow. And especially first couple years, the most important thing is to learn how to live with someone else, live with roommates, and then find out who you are, start building the basic foundations of discipline and explore. I wouldn't pin yourself into one path too quickly. Take a wide variety of classes because you never know what will spark your interest. And I think I went to Furman first year thinking there's only a couple career paths: doctor, lawyer, teacher, pastor, missionary. Actually, there's a wide variety of beautiful, colorful careers out there. And everybody has a gift they've been given. You just have to find out what that is. And I know we'll probably talk about how to do that later, but I think that's where I'll start.
Great, thanks. Let's go to Michael. We'll jump back to Michael here in NC State, Wolfpack.
Yeah, I just work here, so.
Good answer.
Yeah, right. I've worked at many institutions, and they just give me a paycheck, so it's fine. Yeah, okay, so I sort of remember the question now. So what we're thinking, like when you're coming into school, like when I was going into school, I knew I wanted to be in education. I knew I wanted to be a high school history teacher. And I came in guns a-blazing and started that career path without even having the slightest idea that there were other options out there for myself. And so if I can give one piece of advice, if I could go back in time and tell myself something, I would say try something different because clearly I am not a high school history teacher right now. And so there are other career paths that are out there, like Juliana said. And so I think explore. You're at Furman for 4 years, withdrawn from like the real world, if you will. You're in the Furman bubble, and you have that opportunity to explore, to grow, to learn, to find yourself, and really start to learn who you are. I only did a fraction of that work there, and I'm still on that journey now, and I'm 32. So it takes time, but if I can give you one piece of advice, it's that is expand yourself, learn, grow, try something new, or you'll wake up one day and regret it.
I'll say to Michael, I didn't get my first job until I was 32, and it was at Furman.
There you go.
The long and winding road.
Yes.
How about you, Philip? When you think back to late 70s, early 80s, what would you tell yourself now?
Yeah. So I knew about Furman as a child. My dad was actually a minister, and he had gone to Furman. And so I was probably the 10th or 11th person in my family to go to Furman. Now there have been 14 or 15, I think. But I got to know the campus really well when I was a kid. I was comfortable there. So there were a lot of reasons. Plus, it was a great school. So, but I had no clue what I wanted to do when I got there. I had to pick an advisor, so I picked somebody in the political science department, which was wonderful, and we, remained friends through my whole time there. Even though shortly after taking, and again, this was long ago, so they didn't have seminars where classes were combined. So I'm sure that my idea of the curriculum is different than it is now. But there was a required history course. I took it. I really liked it. I took probably the course that really decided my major for me was going to be John Block's 20th Century European History, which was one of the best classes I've ever had in any school I've been in. It was fabulous. And so I think the advice I would have, just based on my personal experience, I think the idea of expanding, growing, the idea of breadth, all those things are important. For me personally, if I had to look back and talk to myself going in, I would have told myself to relax. Not that I shouldn't work hard and hope to do the best I could do and make good grades and all that, but I obsessed over it. And that was a mistake. I had friends who made the same grades I did, but they seemed to be much more relaxed about it getting there, and they're in positions that are at least as good as mine. So there was a certain pressure I put on myself that I wish I had not. So doing the best you can, but enjoying the process. I did not enjoy it as much as I could have, even though I enjoyed it tremendously.
So Taylor, I'm going to switch the question a little bit. So Philip just mentioned John Block's History of England course, or History of Europe course. Was there a particular course in the history major or at Furman that sort of sent you down your particular path?
Yes, Dr. Nayer's class, History of South Asia. I think that was a big one for me, and it was getting to think about other areas of the world, and then thinking about what we know, and also how different cultures record their history, and how that then impacts for future politics and engaging. So I think that was a really big impact for me for the history side. And then I think there was a freshman class taught at the time by Dr. Bainbridge, which helped you really kind of figure out how to write well. And I think that writing well and investing that time, especially in the global field, is really important, because it really helps you to be able to have a niche and to make sure that you're able to capture ideas and also needs and requirements. One of the things I work on is monitoring and evaluation, and so being able to help communities and areas translate to the support that they need, that you're able to kind of piece everything together. So I think those were the two major impact courses. So one within history, one a little bit outside but adjacent. Yeah.
How about you, Juliana? Was there a particular course, either in history or in another department, that really got you going towards law school at some point?
Gosh, well, I took Dr. Strobel's Women in History class. Absolutely loved it. We did a debate during it, and I'd been on a debate team in middle school, but thought, ooh, I need to do this. And really enjoyed that. But let's see. just learning about the impact women have made throughout history really got me thinking about the different. It kind of took off the ceiling for me. I don't know if that's the right term, of possibilities for women and for myself. And I really enjoyed that. I
She'll love
took
hearing it. She's in the audience, so she'll love hearing that. She loved it.
It was excellent. And then I also took a capstone with Dr. Spear, who I know is now retired, on the Crusades. But I think it was called a capstone, right? Senior
Yeah, senior seminar, capstone experience. Yep.
Senior seminar. And that, just the amount of books we had to read and all the papers we had to write, I realized that reading a lot of material and then writing concisely and with excellence is something I really enjoyed. And that's exactly what I do now. Read and write all day.
It's a lot like Taylor. How about you, Michael? Was there a particular class that got your juices flowing? And
yeah, so the class that comes back to me the most was actually my personal finance class that I took. Not gonna lie, being a history major does not present itself well for me knowing math skills or how to do, basic human functions. And so taking a business course or taking something outside of the humanities was a huge thing for me to feel more well-rounded going out into the real world. If I had to drop back to history, I also took a lot of poli-sci classes as well. So I actually loved your class, Lane, when I took it, as well as my politics of China class as well. It just got me thinking about a different part of the world that is going to be very impactful to our futures. And so it was fascinating to learn about that. But if you're in the humanities and you're not good with numbers, take a personal finance class. It'll help you in real life. So
that's great advice, Mike. Yeah, exactly. So those are some of the great classes that you all took that got you excited about potential career paths or about personal finance, learning how to manage some of the more everyday aspects of life. What are some of the experiences you had outside the classroom that were really pivotal when you were at Furman? And that could be with friends or maybe study away, internships. Did y'all do anything like that? Let's start. Philip, was there anything like that when you were?
Yeah.
What was the?
Yeah. So there's several. I was a member of the Furman Singers, and I can't sing anything now, but I couldn't really sing anything then, but had a family connection. But there was a discipline involved in that, and there was a learning of music so it was very different from studying. So twice a week, 2 hours on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then various performances. So it was something to sort of get out of the classroom. It was very meaningful. Bing Vick was the head of singers then, and he remains a good friend. One of the trade-offs at that time was that if you were a member of the Singers, you couldn't go on foreign study. Because of conflicts of schedules and things like that. And so I missed the ability to do a foreign study, which I regret. However, for 3 of the 4 summers following my first year, I traveled. And all of them were school related. So I did an archaeological dig in Israel, which was actually part of the seminary path. I spent a summer in Taiwan, and I toured with the Furman Singers in Europe. And so that was really helpful. And the other thing that comes back to me, some people on the call may know who Albert Blackwell is. He was in the religion department, and he's been one of my heroes since I met him. And in the early 80s, there was a big concern about nuclear weapons, nuclear plants, and things like that. And Albert organized a protest at the Savannah River nuclear site, which happens to be in Barnwell County. So most of the people I know from Barnwell worked there.
Worked at the plant.
My parents were horrified that I actually went to a protest like this, but it was eye-opening for me, and it was a way to rebel, yet rebel within a guided situation, something that wasn't going to get out of hand. And then he asked me to speak from the library steps at an anti-nuclear rally. And there was something really freeing about that. And so taking advantage of that opportunity, a small one, but nonetheless, of activism. So all those things that are outside of the classroom really sort of shaped, I think, or I can certainly trace a thread back from where I am now to those experiences I had while I was at Furman.
Thanks, Philip. So Philip talked a lot about kind of foreign travel as part of his experiences as a Furman undergraduate with the Furman Singers. I assume you've done a lot of travel since Furman. Did you have the opportunity to do some study away or get outside the classroom?
No,
okay.
Ironically, no.
Okay.
So I was actually on student government, so I was AFS, and then I couldn't travel, and then I honestly did not have very much money as an undergrad, so I just was hustling. I think that was it. Yeah, same, Juliana. So no, but I think there was something that just came to mind though about experiences was like with AFS and the SHARP committee. I don't know if it still exists, but the sexual harassment and rape prevention, which definitely interacts with what Juliana works on for bigger and broader, but working with Dr. Strobel actually to help kind of adjust the policy and that policy activism. I think that was kind of sparked that interest in looking into that. So I think that was a really big one where students can work with faculty members to be able to change policy and get it listened to. And I think that's something that doesn't happen everywhere on campuses. So I think that was really that was great to also be taken seriously by faculty members and also to be supported within the history department. I think that's a great experience that maybe some colleagues that have gone to school in other countries haven't necessarily had that support. So I think that was unique for Furman and something that I do think about in work in general. But some of my closest friends come from Furman. Honestly, my biggest shaping probably is that I've made my best friends that have supported me for anywhere and everywhere I've been around the world. And so it's such a nurturing environment, and the support that's established during university kind of continues with you. So I think that it's also great to kind of make sure you take a pause and hang out with everybody. And then the funny thing that has impacted me for going in the field is that I played a lot of beach volleyball. And it's a great skill to have, especially when you are in camp settings, that you were not picked last for the volleyball team. So in South Sudan, we played surgeons versus non-surgeons with the national and international teams kind of mixed together, and I was not last picked. So that was a great skill from beach volleyball and intramurals. Thanks.
How about you, Michael? Were there some experiences outside the classroom that sort of helped you go in a certain direction?
Yeah, I think I was kind of over involved in my time at Furman. I was kind of involved.
I remember that.
And that is really what propelled me into college administration because of my mentors outside of the classroom. They knew that I wasn't satisfied with going into high school teaching. And so they kind of were like, well, if you want to stay in education, this is an option for you to do that you might not have known about beforehand. So being involved in all of those groups like student government, I was an RA for all of my years. I was in a fraternity, so lots of different options. I was in marching band for 2 years also. So like there's just a variety of things. And so it just propelled me in that direction. But I think both my skills inside and outside of the classroom will be able to allow me to do any type of job I want to do. I don't think higher ed administration is my forever home. So if it comes down to it, I feel like I'll have the skill set and skills that I've learned from Furman to be able to transition to whatever I want to do next.
So I'm going to jump the shark here a little bit. And several of you have already mentioned multiple careers. And maybe I'd like to ask, how has your liberal arts education sort of prepared you for making some of those transitions, maybe from Doctors Without Borders to the WHO to something else? Or Philip said divinity school, law school, foundation work, philanthropy. Michael, this is a temporary or maybe a temporary sort of endeavor, and you're going to move on to something else. So could you speak to that a little bit? Maybe we'll start with Taylor this time. You had a number of great experiences already.
Sure. I think so. I went to Furman and I was going to be a lawyer, go to poli-sci, and then I did Peace Corps, and I think everything kind of changed. I came back from Peace Corps and I said, I'm still going to work in DC. This is what I want to do. And I did an informational interview where they said, the famine is breaking in Somalia. We need somebody for a month. You know the region, go for just 1 month and then you'll go back. I stayed a year. And then I went to Columbia grad school into that. And then from Columbia, I went back into to the field. So I think I had expectations of what I was going to do in my pathway, and then it just kind of really changed. And so I think for me, for liberal arts education and applying it, is that I am able to be flexible and kind of adapt and hustle. So you know, I think there's a lot of problem solving. There's a lot of group dynamics and kind of meeting everybody to support bringing out their best skill sets. And I think that comes out a lot. So it's definitely changed where, you know, one day you're meeting with the heads of ministries and the next day you're out in a village supporting the national team to work with their work. So I think liberal arts education does kind of help you with some of the flexibility and also sensitivity, and making sure that you're well prepared, reading ahead, and also making sure that you recognize your place and your place within the culture and what you contribute and what maybe you don't contribute, or what you need to make sure that you aren't interfering with someone else's work and progress. So I think all of that has been helpful, and also making sure that you're mindful. Yeah, so now I sit in headquarters. I won't sit in headquarters forever. I'll go back to being in the field, but primarily based in Africa for 7-8 years in a row. And so I think approaching things with an anthropological lens is a strength. I think everybody approaches health and public health in different lenses, and I've been grateful that mine has been that. And I think then I complement others that are a bit more scientific or more clinical. And then we all kind of bring out the best in each other, but also push each other to grow in ways that maybe we don't have, where we have some gaps. So yeah, I think it's been very, very helpful to have that background and that flexibility, and then also the ability to learn really quickly and kind of roll with it, whether there's a breaking situation like what's happening in Ukraine, if there's a pandemic and the dynamics with respiratory pathogens, and working on genomic sequencing, surveillance strategy. I mean, you just kind of are able to be really flexible. And I think the liberal arts education helps you do that. And it's good to then make sure that it's brought back to the community level. So I think I always have that lens with whatever project I'm working on.
How about you, Juliana? Is this working in the South Carolina Attorney General's office? Is this the place you really want to be, or is this a temporary being 10 or 15 years? Or?
For the time being, I have an incredible mentor, which is my number one piece of advice to all people watching is in my opinion, the number one thing that separates people is teachability. Being able to hear constructive feedback, sometimes mean feedback, and being able to take it humbly and learn from it rather than being offended. And then second part of that would be pursuing mentors intentionally. My mentor at the Attorney General's office is incredible. She's argued before the Supreme Court of the United States multiple times, and that's one of my goals. But of course, you just have to get the right case that goes all the way up. So right now, I have much, much, much more to learn, for sure. Eventually, I'd like to start my own firm, but that's way down the line. I'm very happy where I am right now.
Great. How about you, Philip? You've had a variety of careers. How has your liberal arts education at Furman led you down those variety of paths?
Yeah, well, I mean, there are a couple of skills that have been relevant in everything. I mean, you hear a lot about critical thinking, but it's hard to overemphasize that. I mean, in being a history major, studying religion in a way that made me think again about orthodoxies that I'd grown up with. So, you know, when you go to a religion class and they are talking about things not in a way, not in a bad way or anything, but it makes you think, well, wait a minute, that's not what I heard my entire life. That's not what I heard growing up in church. It helps you think about things, take a skeptical attitude, and sort things through. And so that critical thinking thing is huge. And I think the ability to write. Most people probably, when they come to Furman, think they can write. I certainly did. And then I took freshman comp, and my freshman comp teacher was Phil Elliott, who is retired now, I'm sure. I saw him a few years ago in the restroom at McAllister Auditorium, and I said, "Do you remember giving me?" And we were just standing at the urinal, and I said, "Do you remember telling what you told me?" And I didn't introduce myself. And he said, "Yeah, I remember exactly what I told you." And he said, "You hadn't done too bad, have you?" What he told me was he gave me an F on my third writing assignment in freshman comp. And underneath the F, which he had underlined, he wrote, "I would have given you a lower grade if I could have." And that helped me understand that I didn't know what clear writing was. And then law school did the same thing again. So I think that increasing levels of understanding about what it takes to write a clear sentence, especially in these days. I mean, there's a lot of information floating around. A lot of it's just noise. But I think those two skills, writing clearly and critical thinking, have put me in a good place for all of the different career paths I've taken.
How about you, Michael? Was there any particular insights you got from liberal arts that have served you well in student affairs?
I mean, I think most of everyone has said a lot of the big ones. I think if I can just echo on one, it's just the ability to think differently than how you've thought maybe your entire life, and the ability to question a lot of things. I think that is what a liberal arts education is great at. It gives you the freedom to question those things. But I think if we did a little bit more of that in real life, we might be able to have more coherent conversations with one another. We might be able to have more discourse in the public sphere. So I think it's just really thinking critically and thinking differently. And what employers are looking for now are those soft skills. They know that you have a 4-year degree. Everyone has a 4-year degree now. They're like candy. So what is going to set you apart from another person is your ability to work with a team, your ability to lead a team, your ability to think critically and think differently and have a conversation with someone instead of texting them. So I think it's really important to think about those soft skills for whatever job you're going to go into, because those will never leave us, really.
Great. So all of you talked about some of these different career paths you've gone down, or sometimes career changes, and they've been in some cases drastic, some cases along a kind of logical pathway. A lot of students, as they approach graduation, junior year, senior year, they start to wonder, how will I know that that's the path I should choose, or what kind of decisions were really important at that moment, and thinking that's the kind of job I should pursue for now, and that maybe I can change again later. Did you have some of those kinds of experiences, or what were the moments where you thought, okay, I'll do this for the foreseeable future, and then but I might change my mind later, that sort of thing. Maybe Juliana, is there?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I did not do the typical Furman thing and had my life mapped out right after I graduated. I graduated without a plan, which I know at Furman is like, you don't do that. All my friends either had a job lined up after college or went straight to grad school. I was a nanny for a year and a half. But that was really because it was it taught me about children. I love children. It was very humbling though, and I needed that, I think, to go from a vibrant, always in something. I like Michael's very over-involved, unfortunately. Don't do that. Pick 3 or 4 things and be awesome at them rather than like the 25 things. But I worked a bunch of temp jobs. I explored. I think I did public relations at some point. One time I worked at Home Depot, random thing, and then was also at the same time getting my master's in teaching because I didn't know what I wanted to do, and thought maybe teaching still, just feeling things out. And I always wanted to be an attorney since 3rd grade, but I wasn't really sure. So then I tried to be a missionary and went to a mission school in Africa in 2012, and was going to move to the third world and be a missionary. And then while I was at the mission school, very firmly felt called to go to law school, to pick the dream back up that I'd laid down in college and go. So after I moved back to Greenville, got a job at Womble Carlisle, which is now Womble Bond Dickinson, as a file clerk, which is not the most, for lack of a better word, sexy. Yeah, prestigious. Thank you very much. That's a better word. Job. But it was also very humbling for me. And that was good because, everybody comes to Furman and you are the rock star. Like, you were a rock star in high school. At least I think that's assuming it's still that way, where everybody's student body president in high school. Everybody's straight A's. And those 3 years between college and law school were very, very humbling for me. I had to move back with my parents, which thank you, Lord, for them. Just trying to figure out where I was going. And I was a file clerk, just decided, okay, I'm going to file these lawyers' papers for a while and learn as much as I can. I asked my boss if I could have an extra hour and a half at the firm every week to just read things and ask questions and not be paid. But then she actually ended up paying for me for that because she was like, wow, nobody's ever asked me for this before. And then I went to law school, worked a variety of different internships, intellectual property. I did Wills Trust and Estates. I did landlord tenant. I worked at South Carolina Legal Services, which also isn't the most prestigious thing, but I chose that for 7 weeks one summer because I could be hands-on doing all the different types of law rather than just, serving some big, high, prestigious lawyer, not really getting to do anything. So then after law school, I had a family law fellowship lined up in Greenville. But like I think Michael and everybody else is saying, liberal arts is excellent because it teaches you to pivot and it teaches you to think differently and, not be so focused on, I think, probably an abundance mindset. Like there's always a place to go. There's always enough jobs. There's excitement in the world. I got a call my 3rd year in law school from a solicitor's office, which is a prosecutor in Florence, South Carolina. And they said, we found your resume. We want to hire you. I said, where is Florence? Never heard of y'all. But again, not the most prestigious job that everybody thought. But I thought Florence is very high crime. So I thought this would be an excellent opportunity to do high level cases at a very young age. So I packed up my little self and moved by myself to Florence. And it was the hardest thing I've ever done because it's this little amazing town, but it's not great for young single professionals. So, but it's the best thing I could have ever chosen because I was a domestic violence prosecutor for 3.5 years. Hardest thing I've ever done. But in terms of being exposed to the real world and people and growing and real life, it was excellent. But definitely not the path I would have chosen for myself. It's gone all over the place.
How about you, Taylor?
Cool. Yeah, I agree with what Juliana said. I think it's great to take time and think about what you want, but also get experience. And taking gigs that are maybe less glamorous. So after Furman graduation, I ended up moving to a ranch in Montana. So I worked on a ranch briefly before joining the Peace Corps, because Peace Corps is a bit slow to send people out, especially because everyone's graduating. So I got delayed, and I did Peace Corps in Rwanda, and it was the first group back to Rwanda after the genocide. So there were some other things that had to get set up before we went. So I think having experience that maybe is a little bit different. I agree with what was valuable for me was also having time from undergraduate to going to graduate school and having experience near the field as well, because I felt like I was more grounded and it seemed like a better investment. And folks, at least in public health field, had more grounding to know what they wanted to do within public health because they had some experience going in. So I think that was really valuable. And taking the less glamorous gigs, one of the experiences for me after graduating graduate school was even just working for a local NGO in DRC because it was very hands-on, and it was also running surveys and thinking about how to sample and how to be able to create questionnaires that make sense and translate. And I think it helped too because it was you directly. Yeah, so I think the taking of the less glamorous. My first gig, so after Peace Corps, I did a de facto fellowship. Then went to graduate school, and then my first job out was the Ebola response in West Africa. So I think one of the things for public health, at least, is once you have that first experience, then you get thrown into the deep end. And so I think, as Juliana already touched on, but you are flexible and you're adaptable, so you can fall back and on other things. And the nice thing as well about Furman is that there is a network of people that you can really reach out back to for advice, or if they've been to a certain country, et cetera, or local as well. There's different folks within the alumni network that are always available to support, especially for that first gig. Because I think once you have that first experience, it's easier to pivot to the next experience. But getting that first experience can be a bit tricky. But the nice thing is that Furman does have a big network and established at work, and we're always here to support. Yeah.
How about you, Philip? You've changed careers a couple of times. What were the moments at which you thought, okay, it's time to make that change, or I'm going to draw upon, or I feel led in a particular direction, or I want to move out of law and into something else?
Well, like Juliana, I didn't have a plan coming out of Furman, but I was I was a good student and I enjoyed school. And so graduate school, particularly because of the experience I'd had in the religion department, and I never wanted to be a minister, but I did want to teach for a while. So academia was sort of my first love. And at my age now, sometimes I wonder what would have happened had I taken that road. And I think that could have been a good road for me. But I didn't have a plan. And so went to divinity school thinking that I was going to teach. And I think, like Taylor said, things build on each other. So you go and you experience what you experience, and you learn, or am I going to be comfortable in this or not? And for a while I thought, I don't know that I'd be comfortable in the classroom. And I'll tell you, I had a friend who decided he was going to leave seminary. He also went to Furman, or he was going to graduate and go to law school. And I had thought about law school a long time. When I was a kid, I had clerked in a practice, but it was a small practice and they didn't give me anything to do. So he had to he took the LSAT, and I didn't even know what that was. And so he told me he was going to take it again to improve his score. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to take it. And so just on a lark, I took the LSAT, and it turns out I did really well. And so there came a point in seminary when I had a choice to become a chaplain for a short period of time at Central Prison in Raleigh, which is the maximum security prison in North Carolina, or go to law school. And I decided to go to law school, and not with a great plan in mind there either. I was married at the time, went to law school, learned again that I wasn't the smartest person around. I continued to learn that, and ended up doing something I never thought I would do. I did corporate law and I never thought I'd be interested in that. But the teachers there were fantastic, and I ended up going and practicing law for 9 years in Charlotte. I knew after about 4 years that I didn't want to do that forever, but it took me another 5 years to find a job that paid me enough to pay my mortgage. And so I worked a little bit in healthcare law as part of what I did. And I was able to, I didn't know what philanthropy was. And I had a friend from law school whose great grandfather was James B. Duke. And he let me know that there was a job open at the Duke Endowment, and it was in health. Anyway, one thing led to another, and I got that job for a couple of years. Really enjoyed philanthropy, have stayed there. I stayed with the endowment only a couple of years because the opportunity came open to run a foundation in South Carolina, which I did for 12 years in Spartanburg. And I learned a lot. I grew a lot. I had opportunities to travel. My wife and I, though, always wanted to live in Asheville. And so there came a time after 12 years when I thought that, I've done about what I can do here. And I don't need to be a CEO anymore. So I went down the corporate ladder. I've actually moved down the corporate ladder in every job I've had, I think. That's my job, is to end up on the bottom rung. That's my goal. But I love what I do. I'm getting closer to retirement. And one of the questions that was, Lane sent us some possible questions, and one of them had to do with the word vocation. And I'll have to say that it's taken me a long time to understand this, and because I don't have any good role models in my family for this, but I've learned to work in order to live rather than living in order to work. And my vocation, I would say, is not my job. My vocation is actually literary. I write poems, I read a lot, I write book reviews, and those are the things, reading broadly, reading things that I didn't read that I wish I'd had in high school and college. That's what I love. But the job I have is really interesting. It's a combination of all the things I've done. It has to do with altruism, which is part of seminary. There's a lot of legal related stuff that I do, contracts, essentially due diligence when you're looking at grant applications and determining which ones are the right ones to read, learning how to read a financial statement, and all those things that I learned as a lawyer have. So it's been a gradual building process for me. And it's been a great ride. And I don't know that any of it would have happened without Furman. I have never once regretted being a history major at Furman. It enabled me to do really everything I've done. It's facilitated my entire career. So that's more than you wanted to hear, but
that's exactly what I wanted to hear, and sends me in a new direction for Michael. So Furman education is a lot about learning skills and taking these transformative classes. And with the Furman Advantage, which is the new sort of signature program that most of our students are involved in, one of the aspects is living your best life. So it's learning about careers and kind of what Philip was talking about, that there are also things like vocations and passions and things that you just enjoy. And some of that comes out of your college experiences. And so if you could talk a little bit about what you learned. You had lots of, Michael was Furman famous, as we say, when he was on campus. So what did you learn about living that best life while you were at Furman, and how was that carried over into your career path since then, or your life since then?
Wow, that is a huge question. So yeah, what have I learned about living life? So, I don't know if I have found that answer yet. And things that they don't really teach you in undergrad is how to be a real adult in the real world. And I think that what I mean by that is like when I got my first professional, because I went straight to grad school right after Furman. So I was in another bubble right after that. So I didn't go out into the real world until 2014 when I got my first professional job. And they don't teach you about that you're going to have to make friends through a different setting. You're not going to have roommates. Well, you may have roommates, but you might not have roommates that make it easy. You might not have a whole hall of people that are there to just go to Waffle House at 2:00 in the morning. So I think there's just a lot of skills that are missing from our education system in higher ed, I think. And I think that I am still trying to figure out what living that life means. I'm trying new things. As I get older, you get more money to try new things. So I think I've been afforded some benefits to being able to try new hobbies like photography or taking an art class or different things like that that I might not have done in my normal life. And I think that goes back to what I was talking about, the liberal arts education. You get a little bit of everything. And so I want to try everything. And so I think it's really been able to give me that. And I think leaving Furman's bubble was probably the best thing for me at that time because it allowed me to find myself a little bit more. I am not like a traditional Furman student. I didn't come from the Southeast. I'm not a religious person. I'm not conservative. So it allowed me to get out there and think differently than people who were around me there. And it allowed me to find out who I was. So I think that living life question, Dr. Harris, is something that I'm still figuring out. So
we're all still figuring it out, Michael.
Correct. And I think I'll be figuring that out until the day I die, to be honest with you, which is totally different from what everyone told you in undergrad, that you're going to have this amazing life outside of college and you're going to figure it out from day one. And maybe you do. And maybe you land in medical school and become a surgeon and, perform surgery on a Supreme Court justice. Who knows? But chances of that happening are rare. And knowing your exact path is rare. So if I can give anything, it's just go out and live your life, take risks, and learn something new, because tomorrow isn't guaranteed and you could die today. So that was a great way to end it. But there you go. So that's my thoughts.
Well, let's ask Juliana, how do you live your best life in Florence and then now Columbia? I mean, what did you learn at Furman about all those experiences? You're taken out of, we all call it the Furman bubble, and now you're in the real world. And a lot of reality hits. Yeah.
No joke. Furman bubble is wonderful because there's all these vibrant, amazing people who are awesome in what they do, and they're all mostly quality people. And then you go into the real world where there's all kinds of people, and it was very difficult transition for me. But I think what got me through it and living my best life, like Michael, I'm still obviously learning that, but the friends I found I kept a lot of my high school friends intentionally. I've been intentional about choosing friends and then keeping those friendships, choosing mentors, keeping those mentors. Because really life comes down to the people you know and who loves you. And something I love reading books. I'm in a competition with my friends a lot of the times about how many books we could read a year, just because just learning and growing. I think a couple of you mentioned emotional intelligence, soft skills. Emotional intelligence is huge. To circle back to the first question you asked, is what advice my little 17-year-old self at Furman is start developing emotional intelligence, meaning start figuring out what you feel. I didn't come from a household that talked about feelings where feelings are okay. Um, and that I wish I'd started on that process earlier. But I think one thing I really focused on is stewardship. What is in my hand, and how can I steward that well to serve other people with excellence? And I think that's you find your vocation along the way of what are the things that I love to do that also intersect with how I can serve people and that I can be excellent at. I recommend the book Good to Great. I have so many books I could recommend, but that's an excellent book. Just find the one thing you can be best in the world at and go do that, and don't do all the other things you could be just good at. But and then finally, I am an intentional person of faith. I've chosen to be a Christian, so intentionally. Yes, I was raised that way, but I intentionally chose to continue in that. So that has been a guiding light for me too. Just I've been all kinds of denominations because Furman gave me that courage to step out of the bubble I was raised in and explore exactly what do I believe and why do I believe it, and ask hard questions. So that's a lot of things to answer. Probably another question you asked, but
That's absolutely great. How about you, Taylor? How do you live your best life in Geneva?
Oh, I mean, I'm not great at the work-life balance right now.
Okay, yeah,
I'd
that's
say,
something great to talk about too. Yeah,
as it's 2 a.m. Yeah, working for WHO in a pandemic, I think is probably not the fair measure of work-life balance. But I think we try our best. So I would say um, one of the things that's a good life skill is just learning what are your stress triggers and then also your coping mechanisms. And I think that's something that served me really well. Um, I've been in countries where there's definitely AK-47s in my face, and then I've been in countries where I'm just working. In Ebola, it was 20 hours a day, 4 hours off, 20 hours again, 4 hours off. And so I think you also kind of know your limits, and then know your coping skills. And I think that actually is helpful because once you hit the phase of approaching burnout, it's really important to then recognize and go back and make sure that you're able to as Juliana touched on, to serve or to be your best version that you can be, and when there's that limit. So I think that's something that Furman also helps with, pulling all-nighters and then realizing when you don't have anything else in the tank to pull more all-nighters. So I think for me, what's your stress relief and coping mechanism or mechanisms that are healthy, striving toward work-life balance, potentially failing and then trying again, is also, I'll give myself a pass for the pandemic. But yeah, I think that's all helpful. And I think you guys are all in a unique experience being at Furman during the pandemic. That's not something any of us went through. So your experience is going to be a lot different than ours, for better or for worse. So I think we would also can learn from you how you've been able to handle that and still manage a college experience. Because yeah, definitely we had different types of stressors, and we didn't have a pandemic while still trying to learn all the things that you're learning. So yeah, and in terms of fun stuff, skiing and going outside for beautiful hikes. They have marked trails here. You download a phone app, and it's all public. So even if you're walking through someone's farm, it's not a bad thing. They welcome you. So I think that's also a different experience in Switzerland, and lots of cheese. No.
all right. I want to be respectful of everyone's time and thank all of our alums for joining us from literally around the world tonight. I think we've heard a lot of great comments about your experiences at Furman, how history had made some impact on your careers, but you've also gone in a number of really fascinating directions into philanthropy and health, student services, law field. And I'm sure all the students, if they could applaud right now, would join me in thanking you for all your valuable time, and we'll be happy to keep in touch in the future. So thank you, and we'll end the session here. And thanks again.